Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Go Bills podcast. I am joined by a co host next to me and fellow Miami Dolphin, as well as my best friend, my best man at my wedding, and a good friend of mine, the Dollar or Less Food. And I'm going to be interviewing him for our show that is going to be going on. We're going to do one show that we already did. This is actually going live after the show. I wanted to interview him so that you got to know him a little bit more. I didn't ask a couple of questions I wanted to ask him as the show was going on. We kind of ran into a little bit of a time schedule. So I wanted to ask him a few questions as the show wrapped up, and I wanted to add it to another video. So, Dollar or Less, first of all, foremost, how are you doing today?
Overall, I'm doing pretty good. Uh, Good day, pretty relaxed. Everything was good.
That is good to hear, bud. I'm glad to hear that. First and foremost, I wanted to ask you, I know you've been a Miami Dolphins fan probably as long as I've been a Buffalo Bills fan. And I wanted to know the reason why you became a Miami Dolphins fan.
I think the reason I'm a Dolphins fan is I was born into it. My dad was a Dolphins fan. One of the first ever pictures of me as a baby is me in a Miami Dolphins onesie. Uh, Florida team, been around from Florida. So now you guys know that Go Bills podcast is actually based out of Florida.
Yeah, they actually do know that we're based out of Florida. They know that we're based out of Sarasota, Florida. The reason why I became a Bills fan, same story as you. My father is from Buffalo. I know your father isn't from Miami, but I know your dad's a Miami Dolphins fan. My dad's a Bills fan, and I became a Bills fan because my dad from Buffalo held me up like the scene in The Lion King with Simba, and you can find that on my website of how I became a Buffalo Bills fan. But my dad held me up in front of Ralph Wilson Stadium at the time and said, "You're going to be a Bills fan." So I became a Bills fan, and I fell in love with the team, fell in love with the city, and it's been the best experience I could possibly have. Bills Mafia has been great. I know that Miami Dolphins fans, they are very loyal to their team as well. They are just like Buffalo Bills, where they're loyal, they're passionate fans, and they've been through the struggle like I have and Buffalo Bills fans have been, where we had struggles in the early 2000s as well as the 2010s too. I know that that's been difficult, but we've had success where we've had Dan Marino with you guys, as well as you have Jim Kelly, and the success that we've seen over the years, as well as you also have the only perfect season for a team, and that streak has been kept alive for 50 years. Next question I wanted to ask you, Dollar or Less, is being a Dolphins fan, what is the best game you've ever watched as a Dolphins fan?
I don't actually have a solid single best game I ever have had. However, I would say the games that gave me the most joy were games late in the season. We were out of the playoffs, and everyone's eyes playing for nothing. Beating the Patriots in New England, there's just something about it that just gave me hope. I'm like, you know what? My team may stink, but you know what? We're gonna win. Trying to win one game against New England a year that we weren't expecting to win. That's what I cared about. I wasn't going to win the Super Bowl, but you know what? They weren't going to be perfect, and we were going to take them down.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good point. I know that that's something that being a fan, and when you're going up against a division rival and you're able to take down that team. And I remember the feeling of being a Bills fan and taking down the New England Patriots, who had won like 1,000,000,000 to 3 or 1,000,000,000 to 1 on Buffalo, and being able to take down that team. And then we sweep them uh, with Sean McDermott and Josh Allen and all of the players on the Bills. That feeling of being able to sweep a team and that relief that finally you're able to take down the kingdom, it just felt great. Next, I wanted to ask you, I know, like you said, you've been a fan for so many years. Who overall would you say was your favorite player as you grew up watching and seeing on the Miami Dolphins?
So earlier in my life, I would say Jason Taylor was someone that I paid a ton of attention to when I was playing football, younger as a child and such. I paid a lot of attention to him. Then Jake Long, uh, offensive side of the ball on the line, had some familiarity with that. Also, I had a few other players that I paid attention to. Ronnie Brown, Ricky Williams backfield. That was one that was very important to me. Dan Carpenter. Um, it's hard to pick just a single player because realistically, with some of those guys, they're around for years. They're part of the team. Uh, I don't think I'd say I had a favorite player, although I'd say probably when I was younger, I'd say that Taylor and Long were my two favorite players when I was younger.
Yeah. Now, my next question I'm going to ask, this is something that many fans might not ask somebody that's a fellow YouTuber. Who was your favorite coach from the time that you first started watching the Miami Dolphins to now?
I don't know. I want to say Sirianni in some ways, even though that's ridiculous to say. Maybe just because that's when I was around the team. I was younger. I saw a charismatic guy. It's good. Was he the best coach? No. But he was the first coach that I when you're 4 or 5 years old and watching football, you may not fully understand and grasp the game. But once you get older and you start to actually understand things, you see the impact that the coach plays because it's not just like when you're playing Pee Wees and your coach is that guy that just tells you do this, do that. You actually understand like what a coach is actually supposed to do. It's definitely not Nick Saban. It's not you, Nick Saban. You're not. You're not. That's my least favorite coach. Although I'm happy we learned our lesson.
I got to say this though. Seeing Nick Saban go on from the Miami Dolphins to Alabama, have success, it's something that you question so much because how could he not have success in the NFL? And then he finally has success somewhere else. And he has success with Alabama, and you can tell that he's the protege and probably the best overall coach that probably has been in the college football ranks. But look where he made the jump to the NFL. He didn't have success. Next, I want to ask you, Dollar.
Can we get back on the Saban thing really quick?
Yeah.
There's a complete difference between being a college head coach and an NFL head coach. Your control over the players, the required respect, the do this, do that to stay on the team to get to the next level. Yeah, was he good at Michigan State? Yeah. Was he controlling, dare I say, young men? Yes. Not established multimillionaires. A scrappy 18, 19-year-old that's trying to make millions of dollars is more likely to listen to some guy than a guy that makes 5 times the coach's salary and it hasn't proved that he can do what he's telling you to do.
Yeah, I like what you said there. That's a very good point. I know that's something that you have to think about, where you have a coach that can have success at that level as with younger men versus a guy that's coaching guys that could potentially be older than him, could be the same age as him. It's tough. I mean, going into the NFL, and while we'll probably never see, and I'm 99.9% sure that we'll never see Nick Saban back in the NFL. You never know. Next, I want to ask you a good question here. I know that you're a Miami Dolphins fan, like I said, but you're also a food reviewer. And do you have a favorite dish from your time being at a Miami Dolphins game or anything like that? Favorite go-to meal when you go to a Miami Dolphins game?
I don't. This is going to sound very weird, but the majority of sporting events that I see in person are auto races, actually. I'm a big auto race guy, but my go to food there are corn dogs and lemonade. If I'm going to eat other food at other sporting events, I'm typically a chicken fingers, maybe a burger guy. but primarily the chicken fingers because I can just eat them fast and go. I don't like to just if I'm at a game, I don't like things to be in my hand or in my lap. They're not always the most comfortable areas to sit in an arena. You're hot, bleachers, not fun. I just prefer to have the open space, so I don't like to go to get food at games that much frequently, honestly.
Okay, I do respect that. I know the prices. That's something that other people would say is an issue with sporting events is the prices are so jacked up. I know your show, Dollar or Less Food. I wanted to ask a critic of food review his opinion on that because there's so many different options that you can go and get at an NFL stadium as well as different places. And I know that Miami, you could say, is a Cuban is probably going to be the go-to meal at the Miami Dolphins games. But have you ever had a Cuban in Miami? I know this is a debate. You can say back home in our hometown, which is just south of Tampa, Florida. There's a debate going on now between the Cuban in Miami versus the Cuban in Tampa. And people say that the Tampa Cuban is better than the Miami Cuban. Would you agree with that?
Getting a Cuban in Ybor and getting a Cuban in Cayocha, that area, two completely separate things. I'm not going to say that the ones in the Miami aren't the best, but I'm not going to say that the ones in Ybor aren't. The ones that you get outside of Orlando that are Cuban sandwiches, no.
I respect that opinion. I wanted to ask you that because I wanted to get a fellow YouTuber's advice on what he likes. If you haven't already, go out and check Dollar or Less Food out. He is on YouTube at Dollar or Less Food. Check him out on his page. He has amazing videos out. You'll see collaborations with myself. I'm Brett from the Go Bills podcast, but you'll see collaborations with him and I, as well as different collaborations where he goes out. He has funny videos that go on. They are hysterical. They're funny. Check out his channel. Check out his trailer. It is by far the funniest video I've ever watched. If I'm looking for a laugh whenever I'm trying to have a good day, and sometimes I have bad days, and I just need that laugh from a buddy of mine, and I see that his picture on that screen, and he's eating some food, and he's making a hysterical laughing joke, and sometimes it's corny jokes, whether it's the corny joke or it's a joke about the Bills or something like that. If I'm looking for a laugh, I go to Dollar or Less Food. And if you haven't gone to Dollar or Less Food already, you should do so now. This has been the Go Bills podcast as well as Dollar or Less Food. And we will see you next time for another collaboration with our two channels. As always, go Bills. And more importantly, go Dollar or Less Food. And I'm going to let my buddy, Dollar or Less, give us our sign off real quick.
Thank you for watching Dollar or Less Food, and I will see you next time.